What's up, homies? Leighton here for UFC Gambling Addicts, and this is going to be a different type of episode, maybe like a 15-20 minute, hopefully, smoke break. So if you enjoyed the smoke breaks on this channel and you're a smoker, now is the time to spark up. If you're not a smoker and you're still here, I greatly appreciate that too. So let's get this blunt sparked up and get into a few comments that you guys have left on the community tab. David Longoria, thank you for your comment, man. Love the content, bro, especially the respect you show to all the fighters, even the ones that aren't necessarily going to be champions. That's the way. Keep grinding. My question is, what would be the best way to, and I believe it said start betting. So betting it can be very complicated, or it can be as simple as you make it, right? If you was asking me, like, give you a little bit of advice if you're not a gambler yourself, I would say, first of all, you want to take an amount of money to invest into a gambling account that you're willing to gamble, right? Because it is gambling at the end of the day. So you have to acknowledge, first of all, that you could be wrong. So the first thing you want to do is invest an amount of money that you're comfortable in losing or winning, right? The aim is to win, but you first have to accept, look, this is gambling and I could be wrong. So the last thing you want to do is invest money you don't have. You know, if you've got, say you have a couple grand or $3,000 in your bank account, you don't want to go ahead and invest 50% of that. You know, if you're a newcomer, you want to be smart about it, right? So maybe just invest, say $50, just $50 into your account, or £50, and from there you could maybe play 5 singles and do all those singles £10 each, and that's your £50 invested, and see what you can do from there. Or maybe you can invest £50 and look to do 5 doubles, which are going to get you better odds. Personally, I think the best way to bet is trebles, because it gives you good odds, and you know, it's a good chance of 3 fighters coming through on a card for you. But you do want to start really with singles and doubles, and also don't put a huge amount of money into it. You know, just chill with it. Realize that you can win some bets, lose some bets, but don't go overboard with your money. You know, just money manage when you're starting out. Dylan Morgan says, what's the ideal fight for Sugar Sean O'Malley after he beats Quinonez? Also, do you think he should stay at Bantamweight, or is he better suited for Featherweight? Thank you for the question, Dylan. The ideal fight for Sean O'Malley, if he beats Quinonez, well, we want a step up in competition for all of these guys. That's, you know, obvious. So the step up in competition that could be an ideal fight, maybe a guy like Pedro Munoz. You know, that guy loves to grapple. He's a great grappler. And he is quite gritty on the feet, really has evolved his striking. You see that against Cody Garbrandt with the low kicks. But I think Sugar Sean, man, he's got a big frame for 135. So that could be a problem for a guy like Pedro Munoz, who is up there in the rankings. So maybe I would say that would be maybe an ideal fight for him. As for moving up to 145, I think we will see that. You know, he's only 25 years old. He's nearly 6 foot tall. There's no way he's going to keep making 135. There's just no way whatsoever, mate. Moving into the next one, we have Hulkboy420. Nice name. Do you ever have any last minute changes in your picks? Who would you like to see Yair, Pantera, Rodriguez fight next? Good questions. So starting with the first question, I don't really ever change my picks. Very rarely do I change my picks. And that, you know, the reason for that is when I go with something, when I break down a fight and I go with something and I've got my mind made, if I now start to second guess myself and go with the other side, you know, and my first pick wins, that can really mess your mind up going forward. And I've learnt that. One time that happened to me. I was leaning Justin Gaethje, and then I got soaked into a lot of people saying, you know, Justin Gaethje is the Homer Simpson of MMA. And then I went to James Vick, And now James Vick is the Homer Simpson of MMA. So my advice to you would be, when you break down a fight, go with what you believe in. Go with what hits you first, would be my best advice. If you're wrong, accept you can be wrong. This is a game. When we're predicting and breaking down these fights, we can be wrong all the time. But, you need to trust in what you see when you break down these fights. So, yeah, that would be my advice for the first question. For Rodriguez, man, I'd really like to see him fight Zabit. Both of those guys are really, really talented strikers, man. And, we felt we was getting that fight at one point, and I'd still like to see it. So, for Rodriguez, I'd say Zabit. EarRegardless, should UFC go to places that haven't adopted new unified rules, what changes would you make to scoring? So for the first part, I would say yes, do go to places that haven't got the new unified rules. Reasons for that is because not everywhere has the new unified rules, and it isn't really the UFC's fault, it's more the commission's fault. It is quite confusing, sometimes having those new rules, sometimes having the old rules. That's very confusing, and I wish it wasn't that way. As for scoring, I wouldn't change much with the scoring, right? So the scoring happens like this. It's first decided on effective striking and or grappling, alright? And I'm just letting you guys know this for those who don't know how these fights are scored. That's the first thing these judges have to decide on. Who is the more effective guy with the striking and or grappling? That's what you have to decide on first. If you can't decide there, then it comes down to aggression, right? So who is the more aggressive guy inside the octagon? If you can't decide there, now we go to octagon control. So you look at how it's scored. I'd say the way we score fights, it is near enough perfect. The problem comes when you only have 3 judges octagon side. Look at how many sides there are to an octagon, and we have 3 of them outside of it. I'd say at least 5. If we could have 5 MMA judges outside of this octagon rather than 3, we may still get split decisions, but I'd say 5 get the job better done than 3. Joey Lit, which strain do you love puffing up? Mine is OG Kush. Nice. Well, we have to spark up to answer that question. I'd say the hazes, man. The hazes for me are beautiful, beautiful strains. If I had to pick one haze in particular, I'd say Super Silver Haze. The Super Silver Haze is a beautiful strain. I have recommended it a couple times on my channel. My European listeners may be more familiar with that strain. It is a beautiful, beautiful strain. R. Jones, gonna have some green ready to smoke. Beautiful. That's what I love to hear, man. What's your favourite coffee shop in Amsterdam? Beautiful question. Man, there's so many coffee shops in Amsterdam, and I've literally been to like 50 of them, literally. To pick one out would be hard because there's so many that have this uniqueness to them. Some may have just a beautiful menu. Some have beautiful food menus that's going to help you during your experience at that coffee shop, and some of them just have a beautiful vibe to them as well. But if I had to pick one today, I would say Abraxas. So if any of you guys have been to Amsterdam Abraxas coffee shop, let me know in the comments. That is a great coffee shop. The menu, the food, the vibe. Chris Grieve, what are your thoughts on McGregor hinting at a matchup against Diego Forcefield Sanchez? No disrespect to Diego, but he shouldn't be fighting anymore. The people he surrounds himself with need to be honest with. I'm assuming that says him. Man, listen, Diego Sanchez has no right being inside the octagon again, in my opinion, and absolutely no right being in there with Conor McGregor. Like, Conor McGregor would land just that last CTE blow to Diego's head. There'd literally be a murder inside the octagon. Yeah, Conor McGregor is not going to be fighting Diego Sanchez. I'm just not having it. DK plays, do you train any form of MMA How did you get into watching MMA? What's the craziest, most entertaining fight of all time in your opinion? Beautiful questions. So let's go through the first one. Do you trade any form of MMA? No. I have a little bit of experience in boxing growing up as a kid, but my main sport growing up as a kid would be football. And when I say football, I don't mean the American football, I mean soccer. Um, so you could say me and Joe Rogan pretty much share a passion, a bond for those calf kicks inside the octagon. Um, but as for training any combat, boxing is only uh, the closest I would come to training any form of MMA. Bodybuilding is a huge passion of mine, so you could say I favoured that kind of training to any combat. How did I get into watching MMA? Roughly about 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago, I was on a night shift. Had absolutely nothing to keep me entertained through that night, just nothing. And it was a Saturday night, and I realised UFC was on, so I actually thought I was catching the start of the card, and it said it was the start of the card, the prelims were starting, but then I was seeing highlights and replays for fights on this card. I was like, this makes no sense. I'm watching the prelims, this is the start of the card. So yeah, from that night, I really had a passion, like a passion that started, what I was watching and experiencing for the first time pretty much was just a great time for like 5 hours straight. So from that week to the next week to the next week, I kept watching these fight cards, and every single week it would start with me seeing fights. I'm like, what's going on? This is the start of the card, but you're showing me fights that apparently have already been on, but it's just started. So it took me about 5 or 6 weeks to figure out there's fight past prelims. Like, so this is something I've spoken about in a smoke break before. For anyone who's getting into watching these fights for the first time, do not be intimidated with the schedule. Do not be intimidated with finding stuff out for the first time. Pretty much everyone goes through the same kind of stuff when you're starting out in watching MMA for the first time. I can't say many of you are gonna go 6 weeks without finding out there's prelims before the prelims, but I did, man. So I've come a long way in the game of MMA. The craziest fight, man, that's extremely hard to answer. There's been a lot of crazy fights, but the first fight that always comes to my head when you say that is the Rory McDonald, Robbie Lawler 2. That fight's just, it gives you goosebumps. When you see that stare down towards the end of the round, it gives you goosebumps, man. Great questions, though. Alright, homies, that's the end of this short smoke break. If you enjoyed this episode, this different type of episode that I've done here, please let me know in the comments, and I'll maybe look to do at least one of these every month. Alright, guys, peace.